Take a look at this. These are some plants that are hardening off. We are getting ready to go into the ground. I absolutely love this so very much. Hello, darlings. Hi, and welcome to Front Yard Food with Gardener Gray. I'm Tanya, aka Gardener Gray, and I am growing a garden in my front yard in Middle Tennessee, zone like 6B. I know there's a lot going on in the background here, but between the kids and lawnmowers and everything, please forgive me for that. So I did explain a little bit in my last video about why I grow my garden in my front yard. And it's just kind of a sit down chit chat front porch talk. If you want to go and check that video out, if you make it to the end of that video, I do show a little bit about my garden setup, if that's something that you're interested in seeing. I did show kind of at the beginning, I showed off a bunch of plants that are what we call hardening off and getting ready to go into the ground here in the next week or so, and that is unbelievably exciting, especially after all of the loss from last year, which I also went into on my channel before. But speaking of the loss, that is kind of what I wanted to do here today. I think this is my fourth gardening season, my fourth year trying to grow a garden. I have learned so much about what to do, what not to do. But even having that experience behind me, it has not necessarily stopped me from doing the things that I'm not supposed to do. So I wanted to talk about some very, very common gardening mistakes. And they're common because they are easy to make. And I have even made some of those this year and lost some plants. Good gardeners grow a lot of plants, but they also kill a lot of plants, and I'm no exception to that by any stretch of the imagination. But my hope is to come on here, and if I show you these mistakes and why I've lost some plants, maybe you won't, because you saw I've got some great looking ones like this sugar pie pumpkin right here, which is so lush and green and looking great. And then I've got these melons that are droopy and wilted, not looking so great, and I want to help explain some of that and hopefully maybe teach y'all how to not make these common gardening mistakes that even I make. So I won't belabor the point. Let me get into showing you some things. Okay, so easy to make a garden mistake number one, and I kind of mentioned this when I opened the video, and that is not hardening off your plants. And I will admit, this one is not one I've had a struggle with. Early on in doing my research on gardening, I read a lot about hardening off plants and how to harden off plants and how important hardening off your plants are. So in the case of like that pumpkin plant that I showed you earlier, and some of these, they look great, they're big, they look ready to go out into the garden. But the problem is that I've grown these so far indoors in my house. And if I were to take them straight in my house where it's cooler, where there's not as much light, there's not as much sun, and throw them right out into my garden, it is most likely going to kill all of these plants. Plants can be just a little fussy. They need time to acclimate to the outdoors. And that requires several days. The first thing I did is put them on a shady spot in my porch. Now that I've got them sitting on the front porch rail out getting a little bit more direct sun, and I will move them out to where it is full sun here in another day or so. And then a couple days after that, they'll be ready to go out in the garden. It does take about a week, so you do need to plan accordingly to that. I forgot that I hadn't done it yet, and I was excited thinking, oh, I can put my plants out this week, and realized you haven't hardened them off yet. So that is what they're doing. Again, it's easy to make because we get so excited for getting those plants in the garden that we get impatient and don't want to harden them off. So that is easy to make garden mistake number one. Okay, so easy to make garden mistake number two. And if you see these, you can probably already tell where I'm about to go with this, and that is letting your seedlings get leggy. So these tomato plants right here, You can see how tall they are, but look, they've only just started getting true leaves on there. So they're actually really young and they shouldn't be this tall. What causes this is inadequate lighting. So these plants, they'll stretch up trying to find the light and they get what you call leggy. The problem with leggy plants is that if they're growing up tall, the stems are too thin and they're not going to get strong. And so they're going to continue to reach up, be thin, and they're going to fall over and not be able to thrive. I did choose to show you tomato plants because there is a really cool thing about tomato plants that if they do start leggy, that you can do to save them. So if you look at them, tomato plants have these really fine hairs along the stems. And what that is tomato plants will actually grow roots all along that stem on any place that is in the dirt, that is touching the dirt. So if you have leggy tomato plants, then what you're able to do is to up pot these, and that's what I'm going to do later today. And I'm going to up pot them up to about here. And put that stem deep into the dirt. And what's going to happen is that's actually going to allow it to grow some more root system along that stem and help that plant to be able to grow up stronger and to thrive better. So these tomato plants are going to be okay. I had that issue with some of my other plants that it's not so easy to do that. If you plant them deep, it's really not going to do anything for you. And so they still ended up leggy, but I mean, if you take care of them, you can still kind of overcome that. One of the things you can do for leggy seedlings is come by, if you're growing them indoors, and just run your hands along them. And what that's going to do is mimic the wind. And that wind is a part of what it will help them to grow that strong stem and be able to grow up nice and stout for you. Or put a fan on them to do the same thing is a really good idea. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else I did for my leggy seedlings. That might be it. Just try to give them a chance. Try not to let it go too far. It's a very easy mistake to make because I start my plants under grow lights indoors, and I'm working with limited space, and so I have to kind of rotate those plants around under the lights. And it's work, and sometimes I'm not that great about it, so I do end up with leggy seedlings. Most of the time, though, those are going to be okay, especially in the case of these tomatoes that I'm going to repot today to try to help and save those. Side note on the lighting issue, you can give them too much light. If you keep your grow lights on constantly, then they don't get that period of dark where they get to rest and also kind of establish. But easy to make garden mistake number 3, and this is one that I am super bad about, and that is up potting and letting plants get what you call root bound. Now in the case of those melons that I showed you earlier, they're looking droopy, they're looking a little sad. I think they're going to be okay, but the issue is that I did not up pot these plants, especially with melons. I started in these little 6-cell trays, which are really tiny, and that does not give these plants the opportunity to let those root systems grow out, which helps to raise that plant up and get it nice and established. I've got some cucumber plants here that I also want to show you, and I'm going to see if I can pull one of these out and show you root binding. So, well, this one isn't terrible, but if you don't up pot your plants or give them enough space, you see how those roots are sort of wrapping around here, and you can pull plants out and see that they are wrapped. There's a lot of roots that are wrapped around that. It really, it's a good root system, which is great, but not up potting these and giving those roots a chance to spread out is going to cause these plants to get root bound, and that is going to keep them stunted. If I don't up pot these cucumbers very soon, they're gonna quit growing and they'll just kind of stay in like a suspended animation sort of thing. I will be able to save these. They're still good, but when I up pot them, it'll let those roots spread out and that plant's going to be able to grow a little bit. Those melons that are looking kind of puny, They also got a little bit leggy to start with as well. But once I uppot those and give them a chance to establish, then that is going to help them to perk up, grow out that root system a little bit better, and grow up nice and strong, and hopefully still be able to produce for me. This is one of the mistakes that I make most commonly, because I am the world's worst about uppotting. I really truly am. I will plant seeds and think, oh, I'll get them out quick, I won't have to uppot them. And in the case of like cucumbers and squash, if you don't direct sow them, which is honestly probably better, but I don't, they'll grow fast on you, and they grow faster than you think. And so it is easy to let those get root bound, and I have actually lost plants to not uppotting them fast enough and letting them, you know, giving them that room to spread out and to grow better. So that is easy to make garden mistake number 3. Side note to that issue, and probably the thing that I struggle with the most is thinning seedlings. I will plant, and I oversow. I put 2 or 3 seeds into a cell, thinking that, okay, well, they may not all germinate, so at least I can get, you know, out of 3, I should be able to get 1 good plant. And then the theory is that if you plant, you know, 3 tomato seeds to a cell and you get 3 of them to grow up, you thin them out to the strongest plant. And what I have found, that gardeners who love growing their plants, that is one of the worst experiences, is trying to thin out those plants and actually take plants out. So you either have to thin them out or uppot them, or they crowd each other out, and also they won't grow, so you end up with some more of these issues. That is probably my number 1 garden mistake, is not thinning or not uppotting, because I hate killing my plants deliberately, because I kill enough of them accidentally. Okay, so easy to make garden mistake number 4, and this one's gonna get you, because this one gets me, and that is going to be dampening off of your plants, because of the mistake of over watering. We plant those seeds. We get so excited. I am one of those people that I will plant a seed, and 30 minutes later, I'm out looking in the dirt like, hey, where you at? Have you done anything yet? We get excited. It's a great thing when those plants start to grow. And because of that, we get a little nervous about it, especially starting off, new gardeners, not so new gardeners. We get so concerned about the idea of underwatering those plants that we go the opposite direction, and we end up overwatering those plants. And I promise you, you will have more issues overwatering your plants, and be more likely to overwater your plants than you are to underwater them. And what that is going to cause is something called dampening off. It causes fungus to grow, bacterial growth, and your plant will dampen off. And let me show you what that looks like, because of course I've made that mistake this year already myself. Okay, so we have what is a seemingly healthy looking tomato plants. That, come on. Seemingly healthy looking tomato plant right here. Nice green leaves, looks great. This plant is a goner, and let me show you why. So if you look in here at the stem of this plant, you see how it is pinched off and shriveled up right down there towards the dirt. And that is called dampening off. That's what's going to happen. These plants are going to fall over and kind of pinch off down about where the stem meets the dirt. And when this happens, your plant's gone. It'll pull right out of the soil. It's not going to be viable anymore. And that is because of a fungal issue that the plant has that has caused it to dampen off. That is caused by over watering your plants. And what I'm doing here off camera, I'm actually, because part of that tomato stem is still okay, I'm going to repot it in some other dirt, and I'm going to see what happens to it, because of what I was telling you about with tomatoes forming roots along their stem. There might be enough stem that something else could happen with that tomato. I don't know. We're going to see. I love to experiment in the garden, but like I said, this is probably one of the easiest and most common things to do and common mistakes to make in the garden is to overwater those plants. And I'm not saying let your plants get all wilted looking, but keep an eye on your dirt. Make sure that that dirt is looking dry on the top. Like, I mean, you can kind of feel it. And honestly, down in there, I can actually feel a little bit of moisture still and still a little bit damp. So I probably still wouldn't add water to that if there were a plant in there. Just be mindful, because your plants will pretty much show you when they need to be watered and when they're actually thirsty. The bad thing is normally if I move a plant or lose a plant, I will reuse that dirt. That dirt's already got that fungus in there, so I would have to treat it or do something antifungal with it. They talk about sprinkling cinnamon on top of the plants to help keep the fungus away like that and to help prevent that. And that is possible. Since I have had an issue with dampening off of a few things, that's the only tomato I've lost, but I've lost a few squash plants to it this year. And so I have taken some measures to sprinkle some cinnamon over to try to keep that happening, and I've backed off on the watering. But yeah, that is easy to make garden mistake number 4, and probably going to be your most common one. Okay, so finally, easy to make garden mistake number 5. And this one was huge, I think, for me. And that is not making your garden easily accessible. I talked before about how I live on about 5.5 acres, and the first garden patch that I tended to was on towards the back end of those 5.5 acres. And it was a haul to get to, but it was a fenced in area that just, I mean, looked like it demanded to be a garden space. And I was so excited. And I had heard the advice of not keeping your garden far away, out of sight, out of mind. And I ignored it. And I found it to be so stinking true, because I mean, at first I had a hard time. Like, I had to lug all the plants back there. I had to be far away from my house with little kids in there. And that was difficult. We didn't have access to a hose back there at one point, and had to literally haul 5-gallon buckets of water back to be able to water the plants. And it was tough. And it made it easy to want to give up on it. Like, I don't feel like going out there today, or I can't get out there today. And last year, in the midst of all of the frustration and loss that I experienced, I got mad and just kind of tore everything down. And I said, you know what, I'm going to move it in my front yard. And it has been such a game changer. Right now, I'm standing in the middle of my arch trellises that I grow my cucumbers on. And it's right off of my porch. I mean, you can see my house right here. I can sit on my front porch. I can sit in the front porch swinging and looking at my garden. I can walk by on my way out to my car and, you know, sneak out here to take a peek at the veggies and see how they're doing. And I promise you, like, it has been such a game changer. And I know, okay, this isn't necessarily always feasible. If you have an HOA, if you live in, you know, a small a neighborhood or an apartment, you're thinking, well, I mean, I can't exactly put a garden out in my front yard. And I don't mean that if you can't put it in your front yard, don't grow food. Grow the food. Grab some buckets to put on your porch or your back patio, or, you know, do what you can. If you can find a small patch out in your backyard that you can garden, you know, just do it. But try to make it somewhere that you can easily get to and see constantly from your kitchen window or something like that, so that you can enjoy it all the time. I promise you, it is a gardening game changer. Make that space accessible to you. So if you have made it to the end of this video, I cannot thank you enough for still being here and still listening to me talk about this. I started this platform largely because I get super excited talking about my plans, and the people that I usually talk to my plants about don't necessarily get as excited. So I've got this platform where I can kind of ramble on about the plants, and hopefully there are some people out there who want to hear about it as well. So thank you for being here with me today and for joining me on this journey. I hope that you've taken away something and learned something that will help you on your own gardening journey. And will help you hopefully keep from making some of the same mistakes that I have made. And also some inspiration, I hope, showing you that even somebody who has some experience in the garden can also make these mistakes. We are not exempt as experienced gardeners from doing the things that we know we're not supposed to do. So, again, I appreciate you. If you want to continue to follow this garden journey and see how these plants here turn out, like and subscribe and continue to follow me here. I'm also on TikTok as Gardener Gray. And like I said, I appreciate you guys. The gardening community is absolutely wonderful. I absolutely love you guys, and I hope more than anything that you all grow abundantly, and I will see you next time.